Today we're making a specialty from east of France, Alsace-Lorraine. It's a delicious savory pie made with lardons, caramelized onions and Gruyere, and topped up with an egg and cream royale. But this dish was actually invented in Germany in the Middle Age. But as you may know, this region of France had been shared between France and Germany over the years, especially during World War I and II. It is now remaining in France, therefore I guess France called it their dish. So today this is what we're making. But because it's a dish made in Germany, I wanted to pay homage, and this is why I switched up the lardon for some German Black Forest ham. Today, that's what we're making, the Quiche Lorraine. So let's go. Alright, so we're gonna start with the dough. So I have this delicious dough from the store. What kind of Betty Crocker is this? Oops, sorry. I'm not using that.
No, we are not using that. We're going to make our dough ourselves. However, I won't be judging you if you buy it from the store, but you might, so just be careful. So we're gonna start by sifting the flour and add the salt and kind of mix that together. Then I'm gonna add my butter. Very important to be very cold. You could totally use a food processor to do that step, but I like to show you by hand so at least now you know how to do it if you don't have one. And so I'm gonna use my pastry cutter in order to not overheat the dough. As I mentioned, obviously the heat from your hands could just melt the butter away and it's going to be a full disaster. So we're gonna look for pea-sized little pieces of butter inside the flour. So you're gonna keep on mixing until it's fully combined and you have those pea-sized nuggets. Then we're gonna start using our hands because we actually want to create almost like sand. So it's like a pâte sablée, what we literally call for sand dough. So in between my hands, I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna create a well, and inside that well, I'm going to add an egg and then my water. Again, the water has to be very cold, so it's gonna help with the whole process. Then we're gonna start mixing all that together. Again, I'm gonna use a pastry cutter, so I don't wanna overheat the dough. I know I'm repeating myself, but it is super important. So when the dough starts to come together, you wanna start kneading it. So basically, think about all the butter inside that dough. You wanna make sure that all the butter is fully combined. So what I'm gonna use is the palm of my hand, and I'm gonna push it against me, so that way the butter is all incorporated. When I have my dough together, I want to stop mixing. Do not overwork the dough. It could become super elastic and shrink on you, and you're gonna have a very resisting dough, and it's not gonna be crumbly when we cook it, and that's not what we want. Definitely not. Once you've obtained that beautiful dough, we're gonna just roll it into a nice bowl, give it a tap, and we're gonna wrap it in saran wrap. And then I'm gonna push the dough a little bit just to make it a little bit flatter and rounder, which is gonna make it easier when we roll it. And I'm gonna place it in the fridge and let it cool down for at least 20 minutes and up to 48 hours.
All right, while the dough is resting, I'm gonna start working on the garnishes for the Quiche Lorraine.
So think about quiche like a pizza. You could literally do whatever topping you want. So obviously Quiche Lorraine is a classic, so the garnishes are very precise, but you could do anything else. In this case, we're gonna start with an onion. I'm going to dice. You don't have to be super precise because we're going to cook it. So we're gonna do a nice brunoise and we're gonna put that aside and we're gonna work on the rest of the garnishes. Moving with the cheese. I'm using Gruyere because he has a really strong flavor. You could use a cheddar, you could use Comté. Again, whatever cheese that will have a proper flavor and will bring to the quiche. I'm going to grate it and put it aside. And if you have a little bit left, well, that's your snack. Then the last thing is the ham. Classically, it is bacon, lardons, but again, I'm gonna do something a bit different and I'm gonna do some dices, starting to cut it into strings, and I'm gonna turn around and make those beautiful cubes. And we are done with all the garnishes. We can now start to cook our onions. So I'm going to place a pan on medium heat and add a bit of olive oil. By a bit, I mean quite a good amount. The reason why is the onion is going to absorb all that oil and could burn. So make sure you are working slowly. Add a bit of salt as well. It's going to release some of the moisture, will help the onions cooking. We are looking for this sweetness from the onion, so make sure it actually cooks without burning and has enough time to develop those incredible flavors. When that's done, so we can put it aside.
All right, so the garnishes are ready. We're gonna do the royale in a little bit, but let's start to line up our tart mold with some butter and flour so the dough doesn't stick.
So yeah, obviously we're working super hard on the dough. The last thing we want is for it to stick in the pan and be a complete disaster. We're getting mad, we don't want any of this. So I'm going to place some butter on the heat and just gently melt it. And with a brush, I'm going to apply the butter all across our tart shell. So as you can see, I'm putting a parchment paper underneath because my tart pan has holes. So, and if you don't know where that parchment paper was, you could check one of my other video where I did the Paris Brest. That's that one. I'm trying to reuse stuff here. Anyway, back to the flour. We're going to apply it where the butter was. Make sure we also tap it and remove all the excess flour. And whatever you have left over, you can use it for another time.
All right, our dough is cold and rested, so we're gonna start rolling it.
Okay, so let's add some flour to the bench. And when I say flour, I mean a midst of flour. You need that replay just so you understand. We don't want to have too much flour because we don't want to add any more gluten to our dough. The recipe is perfect as is. So the dough is going to be super hard at first, right? Because the amount of butter content. So you want to tap it and shape it first. And then we're going to start rolling it. You want to turn it into a quarter so you can keep that round shape. And keep adding flour again, a little bit at a time, so it's easy to work and it doesn't stick to the bench. You want to end up with a round that's about 16 inches in diameter because you want to be able to cover the pie shell and some. So you're going to be able to do the sides as well, as I will show you in a little bit. So now that we're happy with the dough, we're going to lift it from underneath and we're going to place it over top. You want to make sure it's nice and centered so the edges are not crooked and you're not ending up with a really long side and a very tiny side because obviously we're going to fill it and you don't want the mix to be everywhere. Anyway, so what you want to do after that is to actually cripple the edges. So you're going to lift with one end and tuck it back in. So you have about ½ an inch of dough overhanging towards the pie. Because once we are done tucking it in, we're going to start to remove it and I'm going to roll the pan around and it's going to cut the excess dough. The excess dough you can place in the oven, cook it, it will be a delicious snack. And then finally, I'm just going to push the dough against the ring so it's nice and even. I'm going to fork it to let the dough breathe a little bit. And I'm just going to finish it with a bit of butter so I can seal those holes so the mix stays in.
All right, I'm now going to freeze the dough for 15 to 20 minutes. All right, we're almost there. Now let's work on the royale, which is the egg mix that we're gonna put into the quiche. Let's do it.
So if you guys are regular on the show, by now you know what a royale is. And if you don't, well, it's time to subscribe to the channel and check the other videos. So in the stainless steel bowl, we're gonna add our eggs and we're gonna add half and half cream and milk. We're gonna add our salt and we're gonna add our spices. So we have some smoked paprika, we have some cumin and some ground black pepper. So we're gonna add all of that in and we're gonna whisk it until fully combined and ready to go.
All right, I'm gonna remove the dough from the freezer and we're gonna start garnish it and cook it.
Alright, it's going to be super simple from here on out. We are going to start by adding the onions and we're going to spread them across so we are making sure they are all over the pie so everybody can get them. Because let's think about it, we have to share this pie so we need to have the same amount of everything. Then we're going to add the cheese. I'll do one layer first and I'm going to add the ham. I'm being very generous, like I want my pie to be full of deliciousness. Then I'm going to cover with more cheese, making sure it's spread all across. I'm going to place it in the oven. I'm going to add all the royale, it has to be all the way up to the top, and I'm going to put in my oven at 350 degrees for about 45 to 50 minutes. 50 minutes later. Let's now take the quiche out of the oven.
Wow, check out this beauty. It looks gorgeous, smells amazing. I'm going to let it rest for about 10 minutes and we're going to try it.
So after 5 minutes, I'm going to just take the ring around out and I'm going to cut it into 8 pieces.
I mean, come on. Check this out. It looks so delicious and yummy. Cannot wait to try it. If you enjoyed this recipe, please like, comment, and subscribe. Description below, you'll find the recipe and let me know in the comments what would you like to see me doing next. I will see you next time and I'm gonna enjoy that right now. That's the real deal. See you soon.